Josh, we had a short squeeze earlier this week, back on Monday. Nickel went to the moon before they shut it down. And once they shut it down, they then unwound trades and backed it out. Why this won't happen for GME.
Or will it? That's what we're really going to discuss today. What will be the regulator's response to a MOASS style squeeze in GME and massive short squeeze, which would take down the potential financial system with it. So if they're going to do this to nickel, which was just squeezing from 20,000 to 100,000, what could they do if GME went from 100 to 10,000? And we're going to kind of just game theory, talk out loud, and see what we come up with these regulators will potentially do. We'll talk about what they did to the nickel. Justin, what did they do to the nickel squeeze?
Absolutely. Nickel started to run, I believe, on the London Metals Exchange or on Monday of earlier this week. They basically stopped trading. It's the first thing they did. House closed. And then they went through. They did a margin call to some, I think, Asian trader, maybe Chinese, who was basically got a margin call. And the dude was just like, nope, not going to pay it. I'm good. Ultimately, the trades were unwound. I think anything above 50,000 was unwound. And so everyone who guessed right and had profits beyond 50,000, well, that's sorry, thanks for playing. But remember, the house is always supposed to win. So I look at that and I go back to two things. First thing is, number one, I think back to what Kirk talks about. He did a monologue earlier this week where he said, listen, the people who are short, these are not fools. These are very wealthy companies with massively large pockets. And if you think that they're going to go quietly into that good night without a whimper, that might not be the most probable outcome. And the point is they're going to fight back. They will call in every favor they possibly can. I mean, I love the phrase from Gone with the Wind. I think they will lie, steal, cheat, and kill if they haven't already done so, in order to keep their to keep the game going. So that's the first thing. The second thing I think back to what happened of January of last year during the sneeze. And what's interesting then is that they already kind of, when I say they, that's Apex Clearing, I think it was Robinhood's Clearing and a bunch of other, the clearinghouse behind other brokers that did the same shenanigans, basically said, okay, yeah, listen, we're going to shut this down, and you basically have to make all GameStop be position close only. So if they showed that card, or that is, if the people who are short showed this card back in 2021, they might be able to get away with it once. Like, oh, we're trying to help retail. This is for your good. We had congressional hearings, etc., all the other things. If they try to play that again, then that might be a bit more sus from this time around, because they've already used it, right? I don't know what they would say or what they would come up from that. So anyways, Josh, that in a nutshell, I think is a very interesting dynamic, is that they already did turn off the buy button for GME. And if they were to turn off the buy button again, the first time they did it, we had congressional hearings. It was enough to get the public to wake up. You know how to tweet firestorm or whatever. If they do it again, the question is that will there be enough of a critical mass response from the populace in general who say, this is utter bullshit?
Yeah, and we're already kind of seeing this. We could see these, Elon Musk would be all over this, and this is just something that he likes. He's tweeted about it before, and he has such a massive die-hard audience. If he was saying, hey, SEC and DTCC, what are you guys doing right now? This is highly illegal. You just shouldn't be doing this. And I just think it could blow up. Then this is really where MOASS could really take off, because now we have all this traction on it. They can't take off the buy button, because what's the politician's only goal? To maintain power, to stay elected. So they're going to say, hey, I don't care if these big guys goes bust. I know we usually hold the public favor in the citadels and these massive guys who got us elected, because they fill our pockets.
Yep.
Now we're already elected and we have to stay in power. The only way we can stay in power is if we have the publics behind us. So I'm sorry, Citadel. I'm sorry, Mr. Male Lover yourself, but I can't do this. I'm gonna have to take the public side on this, not because I want to, not because I care about any of these rubes. It's simply because I need their votes. And if there's enough willpower behind it, they will let MOASS run.
Exactly. And the way I would express that is that as long as the public or the voter base or whatever, right, is diffuse, fractured, split, and at war with itself, you can have the other guys with deep pockets, buying the politicians, buying the regulators, through a revolving door. I mean, that's just a statement of the obvious right there. But the follow-up from that is, and this is where it gets back to, the outrage. Outrage, for better or worse, it's the human condition, in a sense. The bad times bind us together in a strange way. And if you have what's perceived as bullshit, again, coming down the pike from the regulators, especially against the backdrop of kind of a public that's somewhat on edge, considering the geopolitical tensions that we find ourselves in, this might have the effect of unifying the public. A unified public will be able, I would argue, would be able to overcome even the deepest pockets of a entrenched player. Or said another way, if the entrenched player has enough dirt, blackmail or whatever on the regulators or on the politicians to force the politicians to go against the will of the politicians, I think, will know, well, listen, the backlash from that will be even worse than the backlash from this. So it's going to put, in a sense, the politicians and I guess and the regulators in like a moral short squeeze. I don't know if that's a term, but like,
no, they don't. More so.
Oh, fear. There you go. It's a fear. It's a fear short squeeze. It's a fear short. They can't diffuse the fear anymore amongst the.
The reason why I think this will blow up is because they will do everything they can. Nickel, retail was not long nickel. It was just that these hedge funds, a lot of commodity traders, that's not a big deal. Like there's no eyes on nickel for them shutting off the buy button. But if the household GME name, which if they're going to just prevent you from buying it, then there's potentially going to be some outrage. It would have to blow up, though. It would have to blow up the internet, which it could. Yeah. Who knows what will happen? But that is kind of my base case, that it would blow up the internet, because I think there's enough powerful people behind the movement, or if it was happening, they would support the little guy over the citadels.
They would be more afraid. They'd be more afraid of a unified, pissed off little guy than a unified cabal of market or of entrenched money is kind of the way I would say it.
We understand this now, and there's always the risk, though. There's the potential that they screw everybody. They could do the exact same thing, and you have to be prepared for that. Let's say it does squeeze, they could say, nope, you guys are all going to take $1,000 or whatever, and who knows what will happen.
Yeah, so there's several things like PiFi and other people have expressed this comment, like the government's going to shut it down because they're not going to let it blow up the financial system. It's that is a wise thing to say, just to be clear. But I think there's another aspect to consider this on. The first thing is this. What if the regulators know this is coming in, and what if it's more advantageous where we stand right now to actually let this thing blow up from the regulators and from the government standpoint? Consider this simple example. If, let's say, GME squeezes to an obscenely high number, Josh, what's the current liabilities of the U.S. government, both on and off balance sheet, like 100 trillion?
No, if you go off balance sheet, there's zero way to actually track that. But on balance sheet, yeah, I mean, it's shit, 30 trillion, whatever.
Okay, let's just say it's 300. Let's just say it's 300 trillion. Okay, so we know about 30 trillion. Let's just say, well, we've been a little naughty off to the side, so we'll do a 10x. So there's 300 trillion in that regard. If you were the government and you were looking to plug a budget deficit, or you needed to basically reset the debt, this would actually be a way to do it, because okay, well, listen, the thing's going to squeeze or whatever, right? Everyone already has their accounts, at Fidelity, or everyone who holds the position will want to sell the position will have to do so through an entity that's already done KYC, meaning that they'll have social security numbers, meaning that they'll be tax withheld and assessed on this front. So there's that thing. The second thing from this is that it talks about the global financial system. And again, I think PiFi is very wise to comment on this. My only, not rebuttal, I don't mean rebuttal, but I mean in terms of, again, a different angle from this, is that I think the U.S., at its core, wants the world to move away from the dollar as the world's reserve asset. Again, this goes beyond the scope of this video, but let's just pretend that the powers that be in the government and other powers that be that aren't in the government actually say, okay, listen, it's time to have this transition. And if this is a modus operandi to open the door to facilitate the transition, then yes, it would blow up the financial system. But if it blows up the financial system and, oh, look at that, they just happen to have the other financial system kind of ready to go from the get-go, then, again, this is maybe tinfoil hatty right here, so just to be clear, but I'm just trying to say, like, there is a path forward where this would make sense. And lastly, I'll comment on this. I think that the Federal Reserve, as all centrals do, very much want the ability to stimulate you, me, entities, basically to put spendable units of currency into the real economy. Again, outside the scope of the video, but for all intents and purposes, the Federal Reserve cannot do it. They cannot print money right now unless they have some entity to launder, for lack of a better word, what they create and turn it into spendable dollars. And I note that a massive failure in a DFMU like the DTCC or the OCC or COMEX, if you're looking at commodities or whatever, a massive failure there leading to a bailout would essentially allow the Fed to use a failing DFMU or DFMUs to launder bank reserves into the real economy. In other words, create a massive amount of inflation. Now, I think that's what, or it has the potential to create a massive amount of inflation. Let me just be clear on that front. So I find that very interesting, and I find that it would also have the ability to maybe do a few other macro policy goals. It would give the excuse to launch a CBDC, a central bank digital currency, transition to like a digital dollar, and a few other things, especially if you destroy the faith of the old dollar. So anyways, again, like I'm not trying to go like down the rabbit hole. I'm not trying to go like tinfoil hatty, but I'm just trying to make an argument saying that the reason the regulators and the politicians might not step in to do this is because they might view a short squeeze as cataclysmic and as destructive as it would be for the system to be a net plus on the whole. Now, will there be shenanigans when this finally kicks off? Oh, of course. It was no coincidence that Gensler, what was it, like about 3 weeks ago, Josh, he tweeted out the tweet, oh, hey, by the way, guess how long the SEC can suspend trading? It's about 10 business days, about 2 weeks. I mean, that's no accident that they do this, but it's just priming. Anyways, Josh, comments?
I don't know why I'm seeing so much FUD. It is, I'm honestly surprised. It is.
It means you're over the target.
Yeah, and I makes me feel much more comfortable in my position, because what I think, I was kind of feeling nervous for a while because everyone was kind of screaming. It just doesn't really make me feel easy, but everyone was getting like I've been getting text messages, people saying like, "Hey, is this gonna happen?" I'm just like, I don't know, but I mean, I see those texts and it makes me much more calm.
The way I remain calm is I just don't log on to my portfolio. It's just like, no, no.
More now. I've traded Zim. That's been up pretty drastically. I have a lot more capital now to actually deploy towards GME because of that. There's a lot of trading opportunities out there. You can grow your portfolio and then just increase your position size. And I want to get a much bigger GME size if possible. And if they're gonna let this sink more, I will continue to buy more as my wealth grows. So hey, I would love to see us sink down this week a little. And I mean, we have earnings the 17th. I think that's Thursday. I am very interested to see what Mr. Cohen's statement will be. Who knows? He could put some little snippets. If you believe in the thesis, then just. Oh
yeah, I mean, like specifically for that.
There's nothing that's changed unless you own options like us. Then you stress out. But I'm gonna wait this week. If there is no price movement, then I'm gonna roll all my positions down to the January 2023. If not, then if we do see price movement, then we'll have to update you from there. As of right now, looks like I've been picking up some January 2023 950 calls today because they were getting ridiculously cheap. Who knows what will happen next week, but by next Friday, if we see no price movement, then I'm going to start rolling the other contracts.
Yeah, no, I probably will do the same thing. Mainly the Aprils will be the first ones to be pushed back. I'll see what happens with June, but that's going to be, if nothing happens on the plus side, that is going to be, I will not have a smile on my face, but I knew what I was getting into.
Justin will have to do things for money he could have never imagined he would ever have to do.
Yeah, that's sometimes how it breaks. Yeah. Sometimes how it breaks.
So great when that happens, MOASS will start as
that's how it works, of course. Yeah. So yeah, thank me in advance.
Yeah. So there's not too much going on. I mean, if you are just seeing all this FUD and it bothers you, just don't look at it. I mean, if like really, I don't know why people are so stressed out. It could be because I'm a new GMEer, but I mean, have we done the research? And if we're either wrong with the research with everything, or we're right and we're just playing into their game. Because if I was a market maker and I knew that this was endgame, and then I would be doing everything I could to be spreading as much fear as humanly possible. So I've seen it everywhere, and that makes me feel much more secure and make me want to actually increase my position size.
Yeah, and consider this too, right? So, I mean, GME and Cohen have several aces up their sleeve. Number one, we saw the buy into BBBY, Bed Bath & Beyond. We saw Cohen come to the board, and that is the Bed Bath & Beyond board, and specifically talk about spinning off Bye Bye Baby. There's been chatter ever since the Q2 2021 earnings about potential GME spinoff from an NFT marketplace, particularly if they spin it off by issuing a NFT dividend to basically transfer ownership.
Very low. it's still an interesting play, but I think the probabilities of that are low. The main buy-in of BBY, if he buys into another one of these names that are going to drastically change the FTD cycle, so that's what I'm really looking at. What will be the next FTD cycle? Are we going to see massive massive spikes because of this BBY increase? That is something that could, if he's doing that under the scene, then we know something's up.
And the other thing too is that if BBY squeezes, and if BBY squeezing throws off, as I like to call it, the exotic transactions that warehouse the short interest of GME, what did Girk talk about? He talked about like the one of those perpetual motion machines or whatever, right? Which is it's complex, whatever, right? So you screw up one thing and it creates this cascading thing. It's like the snowflake that hits the snowpack that triggers the avalanche. When the avalanche gets triggered, all hell's going to break loose. So anyways, I guess to put a bow on this and wrap it up, I'm not really too worried about where we are right now. Very curious to see what happens next week with earnings coming down the pike. Very curious to see how BBY plays into this, and also very curious to see about geopolitics, because I think that from a very, very big picture, the system itself, that is financial system, has to call bullshit on the financial system. And I don't think it would do it unless it had a gun to its head. You and I are not big enough to put such a gun to the financial system's head, but perhaps a certain country that just decided to disconnect from the internet and has probably the most gold one of the highest amounts of per capita per citizens in the world. I suspect the leader of that country has the ability to not only put a gun to the financial system's head, but pull the trigger.
Thank you for watching. We will see you guys in the next one.